Okay, good afternoon again, everyone. This is Nick Petro at the National Weather Service in Raleigh, about 4:30 on Tuesday, January 16th, with Winter Storm webinar. And so the first thing I wanted to touch on with this 4:30 update, and thanks again for joining us here on this Tuesday afternoon for this afternoon update, because a few things have indeed changed since we talked at 11:30, and one, of course, being the winter storm warning. We've upgraded the winter weather advisory for a large portion of central North Carolina. On this slide here, you can see the pink represents where there are winter storm warnings in effect, and then the blue represents winter weather advisories. The criteria for winter storm warning is 3 inches of snow. So where you see the pink, right off the bat, you could think, okay, we're expecting, at least 3 inches of snow. So anyway, that's the deal there. Winter weather advisories for snow is typically 1 inch or more. So anyway, the other changes are higher snowfall amounts, so slightly higher. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. The main points here: snow, hazardous travel as a result of that snow, and pretty cold readings with wind chill. So basically, we're talking all of central North Carolina will be affected by this storm. And when's it going to happen? It's going to be late tonight, more like Wednesday morning, lasting through the late morning and into the afternoon, and then things wind down in terms of snow falling by Wednesday evening. But then we're going to deal with the cold for Wednesday night, and subsequently some issues with black ice Thursday and Friday morning. So that's the main gist of that. Obviously, significant elevated impacts, and certainly all of central North Carolina. Okay, so here is the snowfall. Let me just get right to these newer amounts compared to what we had at 11:30. Now, the lower left, and again, this is a fairly new product. We started this last year. It's what we call our range of possible snow accumulations, otherwise known as probabilistic snow amounts. And essentially what that lower left is indicating, that's the lowest snowfall amounts indicated on any of the models used in the suite of models to come up with snowfall amounts. In other words, expect at least this much. At least is the key word here in that lower left. On the lower right, if the worst comes to pass, this is basically, while amounts in this graphic in the lower right may seem too high, it shows that there's at least one or more models showing these higher end amounts. Of course, it's lesser likely to occur, but it can't be completely ruled out. Of course, you may recall, this higher end amount or worst case scenario was the one that came to pass 2 weeks ago with that storm. We had the last one. So anyway, given that range of model solutions being considered, the one in the middle is what we think is the most likely scenario to occur. And that represents our official forecast. So you can see a swath of 3 to 4 inches of snow is expected, basically 30 miles either side of the highway US 1 corridor. So if you envision where US 1 runs, and you basically just draw a line 30 miles either side, that's basically central North Carolina, the Triangle region, and down to Southern Pines and up towards Warrenton and Henderson. So flanking that on the western and eastern sides, we're looking at a 2 to 3 inch snowfall amounts. And then so again, this is pretty much all of central North Carolina is going to get into these into at least a couple inches of snow. All right, what about timing? I know that's a big issue. When can we expect it to begin? When's the worst of it going to be? When's it going to end? So we think that basically early overnight tonight, midnight to 2 a.m., we might begin to see the first few sprinkles or maybe flurries begin to approach the Triad region. And then as we get later into the overnight hours, closer to sunrise in that 3 to 5 a.m. time frame, light to moderate snow will be underway for areas west of US 1. I also want to point out that the leading edge of the precipitation shield, so Albemarle over to Troy, maybe up towards Siler City, you might see a little bit of rain at the very start, but that's not expected to last too long. It's expected to change over to snow in those areas, and certainly and then obviously conditions going downhill after that. Okay, jumping ahead to 6 to 7 a.m., sort of, what we would think of the morning commute hours. Light to moderate snow will be underway for areas west of I-95. Moderate snow falling across much of central North Carolina. And then again, the leading eastern and southern edge may briefly begin as rain. So we're talking, Southern Pines, over toward Wadesboro and Rockingham could see, and perhaps even further up, although it's not indicated on this graphic, we could see right along I-95 up toward Roanoke Rapids, some light rain at the very onset, and then it changes over to snow. All right, so jumping ahead to between basically 9 and 11 a.m. Wednesday, we're going to have moderate snow across much of central North Carolina. As you look back towards the northwest Piedmont, west of the Triad, it might begin to lighten up. During the early afternoon, noon to 2 p.m., snow will begin winding down across the Triad. Who knows, maybe even some sun might try to get through. And that will be helpful for obviously for road conditions if that does happen. But east of the Triad, the moderate snow will still be ongoing for the noon to 2 p.m. time frame. And then for the late afternoon, maybe heading into what we would consider the beginning of the evening rush hour, we'll finally begin to see snow winding down west of the US 1 corridor, and maybe even beginning to lighten up from the triangle eastward during that early commute, late day commute, that is, or let me just say late afternoon, probably is a better way to characterize it. It'll all exit. Snow will then quickly end from west to east during the evening hours. So keep that in mind. I mentioned this earlier at the bottom. I'll mention it again as the precipitation ends. Now we're talking about the western edge of the precip shield. It's possible it might briefly end as a very brief period of light freezing drizzle, but we're not expecting any issues due to that. All right. Okay, so this is another way to convey the most likely beginning and ending time of precipitation. This basically just shows what I went through on the previous two slides. It's another way of looking at it. So this will be emailed to everybody, or actually it already has. I've already emailed these slides to everybody. So if you're listening to this webinar, you've already got in your inbox a PDF copy of these slides. And I'll be uploading these to our website as well. All right. Now, once the snow is over, we are obviously concerned about things turning pretty cold tomorrow night. So we're looking at some single-digit wind chill readings expected Wednesday night and Thursday morning. And obviously proper precautions for that will need to be taken. And certainly black ice will be, morning episodes of black ice will be possible after the snow ends. Basically, we're talking about Thursday and Friday mornings. Again, for the places that receive snow, which should be most of central North Carolina. During those times, we'll need to be extra cautious if you're venturing out. Roads that appear clear could be coated with a thin layer of ice, and anytime there is a risk for widespread black ice after snowfall events, we issue winter weather advisories to raise awareness about that threat. So look for winter weather advisories in the wake of the storm due to black ice. All right, a couple additional key points I wanted to mention, just because, again, these storms are always elements of the storm that we need to think about, kind of outside the box ideas in alternate scenarios. But I wanted to point out this will be a quick hitting event. Any given location in central North Carolina will see about a 6-hour window during which accumulating snow may be falling. So look for about 6 hours of snow accumulation. Not that it's going to be heavy the whole time, but that's about the length during which any one location will experience accumulating snow. Once the snow does develop, as if there is a little light rain at the beginning, but once it changes the snow, the onset of more intense snowfall rates could be rapid. In fact, there also could be occasional brief bursts of heavier snow, resulting in road conditions that quickly deteriorates. That is, road conditions could go from being fine 1 minute to treacherous the next when and where these heavy snow bursts occur. So keep that in mind if you have to venture out tomorrow, or just know that once it starts, if you get into one of those heavier bands, things could go downhill really, really quick. All right, hourly snowfall rates of 1/2 to 1 inch per hour will be possible. That is the heavier The heaviest, with the most readily and rapid accumulation, is expected to occur between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. 2 to 4 inches of snow will be possible across a large portion of central North Carolina. However, a narrow, very localized band of heavier snow will also be possible. Areas that see this may receive up to 6 inches of snow. What we're saying here is don't be surprised if there's some kind of narrow swath, very localized area that receives, greater than the 3 to 4 that we're expecting, most places. So there could be a localized swath of 5 to 6 inches somewhere, but right now it's just too difficult at this point to identify which particular areas may see those intense snow bands and greater snowfall amounts. Now, earlier I got a request, to convey some alternate scenarios, best case or worst case scenarios. In other words, what are the things that could possibly go wrong with this forecast? So, a best case scenario might be if the precip shield remains rain longer than we expect. And then, of course, that would cut down on snow amounts. So, right now we're expecting that eastern edge, when it comes in as rain, to only last for 15 or maybe 30 minutes before it changes to snow. But if that were to hang on longer and last maybe for an hour or so, then that would, could cut down on snow amounts. So that would be sort of a best case scenario if it stays rain longer than we expected. The worst case scenario on the flip side is that if the upper level disturbance intensifies, or if the movement of it slows down, if those bands that move across slow down and take longer to get through, there could be several bands of heavier intense snow with higher amounts than what's currently forecast. So if it intensifies or if it slows down, we may even have more than what's expected. That's kind of the worst case scenario. All right. So wrapping it all up, the event summary, look for pretty much a pretty general 2 to 4 inch snow event across a good portion of the area. Our confidence is pretty good with this. Winter storm warnings have been issued. There's also winter weather advisories for a large part of the state. We're thinking that early Wednesday morning through Wednesday afternoon will be the period of greatest impact, with very difficult and dangerous travel conditions developing due to snow-covered and slick roads. That could continue into the nighttime hours even after the snow ends. Very cold temperatures in the teens and wind chill readings in the single digits are expected tomorrow night and Thursday morning. And then finally, black ice will be possible on the roads and walkways Thursday and Friday mornings. The typical black ice issues we have after snow events. And, we'll be issuing winter weather advisories for those areas that have that accumulated snow due to black ice the subsequent mornings. So anyway, that is the summary of changes and what we think is going to happen. We'll do the next webinar for this particular snow event will occur tomorrow at 11:30, but we'll send additional updated PowerPoint briefings periodically before then and throughout the event. So look for another update to these slides, just emailed. Certainly by 10:30 this evening, our folks on the evening shift will get these slides updated and emailed out. But we are going to do another webinar. If you've signed up for this particular webinar and you're obviously watching it, then use that same link to join us at 11:30 tomorrow morning.